The conference room fell silent as Ethan Cole's voice cut through the air like a blade. "You're fired, Miss Brooks." Lena stood frozen, her hands still gripping the leather portfolio she'd brought for the investor meeting. Around the mahogany table, 12 pairs of eyes stared at her, some with pity, others with barely concealed satisfaction. The morning sun streaming through the floor-to-ceiling windows suddenly felt too bright, too exposing. "Excuse me?" Her voice remained steady despite the earthquake happening inside her chest. Ethan didn't even look up from his tablet. "You heard me. Pack your desk. Security will escort you out within the hour." 3 years. 3 years of 14-hour days, of canceled plans, of being the only person brave enough to tell the great Ethan Cole when he was wrong. And this was how it ended. Over a misplaced file that wasn't even her fault. Lena set the portfolio down with deliberate care. "You'll regret this one day, Mr. Cole." She walked out of that conference room with her head high, even as her world crumbled behind her professional mask. 6 months earlier, Lena had walked into Cole Industries with hope blazing in her chest and a resume that barely qualified her for the position. Her mother's cancer diagnosis had just come through, and the medical bills were already starting to pile up like snow in a blizzard. She needed this job desperately, but she'd sworn to herself she wouldn't let anyone see that desperation. Ethan Cole had been different then, or maybe she'd been too naive to see what everyone else saw. During the interview, he'd challenged every answer she gave, pushing and prodding like he was trying to find the breaking point. But Lena didn't break. She pushed back. "You realize this job will consume your life?" he'd asked, leaning back in his chair with that expression of cool assessment that she'd come to know so well. "I realize you're trying to scare me away," she'd replied. "Is that what you do with all your candidates, or am I special?" The corner of his mouth had twitched. Not quite a smile, but close enough. "You're hired." Working for Ethan Cole was like dancing with a hurricane. He was brilliant, demanding, impossibly exacting. He expected her to anticipate his needs before he voiced them, to solve problems before they became crises, to be present at all hours of the day and night. Most people lasted 3 months before they cracked under the pressure. Lena lasted because she learned his patterns. The way he rubbed his temple when a headache was forming. The slight tightening around his eyes when a deal was going south. The particular tone in his voice when he was about to fire someone, which happened with alarming regularity. She also lasted because beneath the ice-cold exterior, she'd glimpsed something else. Loneliness. The kind that carved itself into a person's bones and made a home there. Late one night, 3 months into her employment, she'd found him standing at his office window, staring out at the glittering city below. It was past midnight, and she'd come back to retrieve her forgotten phone. "Don't you have a home to go to?" she'd asked. He turned, surprised to see her there. For once, his guard was down, and she saw the exhaustion etched into his features. "Don't you? My mother's asleep by now. The nurse is with her." The words had slipped out before she could stop them. Something had shifted in his expression. "Your mother's ill? Cancer. Stage 3. Lena had grabbed her phone from the desk, suddenly wanting to escape his scrutiny. "Good night, Mr. Cole." "Ethan," he'd said quietly. "When it's just us, you can call me Ethan." She'd never used that privilege, but the offer had changed something between them. He started asking about her mother's treatments. He stopped scheduling meetings past 7 unless absolutely necessary. Once, when she'd fallen asleep at her desk after a particularly brutal negotiation, she'd woken to find his suit jacket draped over her shoulders. They developed a rhythm, a language of glances and gestures that spoke louder than words. When investors tried to intimidate her during meetings, Ethan shut them down with surgical precision. When he was about to make a decision driven by pride rather than logic, she'd clear her throat in that particular way, and he'd reconsider. "You're the only one who isn't afraid of me," he'd remarked once, almost wonderingly. "You're the only one who doesn't treat me like I'm fragile," she'd replied. But that morning, everything had shattered. The file that should have been on his desk, the one containing confidential information about the Yamamoto merger, had gone missing. In the chaos of accusations and finger-pointing, Ethan's assistant, Marcus, had suggested that Lena must have misplaced it. She'd seen the calculation in his eyes, the opportunism. Ethan had believed him. Without question, without even asking for her side of the story, he'd made his decision in front of the entire board. Now, as Lena cleaned out her desk under the watchful eye of security, she felt the weight of failure pressing down on her shoulders. How would she pay for her mother's treatments? How would she explain this to the landlord who was already breathing down her neck about late rent? "This is cold, even for him," whispered Jennifer from accounting, hovering nearby with genuine sympathy in her eyes. Lena forced a smile. "I'll be fine." She wouldn't be fine. But she'd be damned if she'd let anyone see her break. If you're enjoying this story, please hit that subscribe button and drop a comment below. Your support means everything and helps us bring you more stories like this. The first week after firing Lena, Ethan told himself everything was fine. Better than fine. The office ran smoothly. Marcus had stepped up to handle scheduling and correspondence. There was no one challenging his decisions or giving him those pointed looks when he was being unreasonable. By the second week, cracks started to appear. Small things at first. His coffee was wrong every single morning. Meetings ran over because no one managed them with Lena's ruthless efficiency. He missed a call with the Tokyo office because it wasn't in his calendar, even though he'd mentioned it once in passing. Lena would have remembered. Lena remembered everything. "Marcus," he snapped on day 12, "where's the Henderson file?" Marcus blinked at him with barely concealed panic. "The Henderson file, sir? The real estate acquisition in Brooklyn. I need it for the 3 o'clock meeting." I'll find it right away." 20 minutes before the meeting, Marcus still hadn't found it. Ethan ended up going in unprepared, winging a presentation that should have been flawless. He closed the deal anyway, because he was Ethan Cole and that's what he did, but the sloppiness grated on him like sandpaper against skin. That night, alone in his apartment that overlooked Central Park, he poured himself a scotch and admitted the truth he'd been avoiding. He'd made a mistake. A catastrophic, pride-fueled mistake. The file had turned up eventually, exactly where it should have been. Marcus had simply failed to look properly. The accusation against Lena had been baseless, born from Marcus's desire to eliminate competition and Ethan's own willingness to believe the worst in a moment of stress. He'd fired the one person who'd never given him a reason to doubt her loyalty. Ethan pulled out his phone, scrolling through his contacts until he found her number. His thumb hovered over the call button for a full minute before he set the phone down. What would he even say? "Sorry I humiliated you in front of the board? Sorry I didn't trust you? Sorry I was too proud and too blind to see what was right in front of me?" Instead, he did what he always did when emotions threatened to overwhelm him. He dove into work, burying himself in acquisitions and negotiations until the guilt became just another dull ache he could ignore. But 3 weeks after firing her, he saw her. Pure accident. He'd been walking back from a lunch meeting in Midtown when he glimpsed her through the window of a small cafe, wearing an apron and serving coffee to customers. Lena Brooks, who had managed a billionaire's empire, was working as a barista. The sight punched the air from his lungs. He stood on the sidewalk, frozen, as she laughed at something a customer said. She looked tired. Thinner than he remembered. But she was smiling. And something about that smile made his chest tighten painfully. He went inside. He didn't plan to, didn't think about it, just found himself pushing through the door as a bell chimed overhead. Her smile vanished the moment she saw him. "What do you want?" "Coffee. Black." "Coming right up." Her voice was professionally pleasant, but her eyes were cold as winter steel. He watched her work, noting the efficient movements, the way she still did everything with that same focused precision. When she set the cup in front of him, he said quietly, "Lena, I need to talk to you." "That'll be $4.50, Mr. Cole." "I made a mistake." "Cash or card?" "Please, just listen to me for 5 minutes." She leaned across the counter, her voice low and cutting. "You want to know what I've been doing for the past 3 weeks? Working 3 jobs. This cafe in the morning, data entry at night, and freelance bookkeeping on weekends. Because my mother's medical bills don't stop coming just because you decided I was expendable. So no, I don't have 5 minutes for you. I don't have 5 seconds." She turned away to help the next customer, and Ethan left without drinking the coffee. That night he made calls. Discreet inquiries. What he learned made his guilt transform into something sharper, more painful. Lena's mother's condition had worsened. The insurance had denied the latest claim. Lena had taken out a loan at an interest rate that should have been criminal just to cover one round of treatment. And he'd known. He'd known about her mother's illness, had seen how hard she worked, how much that job had meant to her. And he'd taken it away over a mistake that wasn't even hers to own. Ethan stared at the ceiling of his bedroom, unable to sleep for the first time in years. He'd built an empire on calculated risks and cold logic, but somewhere along the way, he'd forgotten how to be human. Lena had reminded him. Her fierce loyalty, her sharp wit, the way she challenged him not out of disrespect but because she genuinely cared about making things better. He'd fired her because in that moment of anger, she'd represented everything he feared: vulnerability, dependence, the terrifying possibility that he needed someone else. The realization settled over him like snow, cold and quiet and inevitable. This wasn't just guilt. It wasn't just regret over losing a competent employee. He'd fallen in love with her, probably months ago, and he'd been too much of a coward to admit it even to himself. Now it was too late. Or maybe it wasn't. Ethan Cole hadn't built a billion-dollar empire by accepting defeat. He'd won hostile takeovers, negotiated impossible deals, turned failing companies into success stories. Surely, he could find a way to make this right. The next morning, he called his head of HR. "I want you to reach out to Lena Brooks with an offer to return. Double her previous salary, full benefits, and I'll personally cover her mother's medical expenses." 2 hours later, HR called back. "She declined, sir," she said, and I quote, "Tell Mr. Cole that I'm not a toy he can throw away and pick up again when convenient." Ethan sat back in his chair, a rueful smile tugging at his lips despite the sting of rejection. Of course, she'd said that. Lena Brooks had never been anything less than brutally honest. "Sir," his HR director ventured, "should I make a counteroffer?" "No," Ethan said slowly. "She's right. I need to do better than that." He started following her career from a distance. It turned out Lena hadn't been idle. She'd connected with several of the clients she'd impressed during her time at Cole Industries, and they'd started recommending her for consulting work. Within a month, she'd left the cafe and the data entry job behind, focusing entirely on building her own client base. She was good. Better than good. She had a gift for seeing the heart of complex problems and cutting through the noise to find elegant solutions. Companies started seeking her out specifically, willing to pay premium rates for her insight. Ethan watched her rise, and his feelings evolved from guilt into something deeper, more profound. Admiration. Love that went beyond apology or restitution. He wanted her to succeed, even if that success took her further away from him. But he couldn't quite bring himself to stay completely distant. When one of his contacts tried to lowball her on a consulting fee, Ethan made a call suggesting that treating Lena Brooks poorly would be a mistake they'd regret. When a competitor attempted to sabotage her reputation with false rumors, Ethan's legal team shut it down before the story could spread. He never told her. She would have hated the interference, would have seen it as more evidence that he didn't believe she could succeed on her own. So he helped from the shadows, his penance paid in secret protections and quiet advocacy. For months after firing her, disaster struck Cole Industries. A former employee leaked confidential information to the press, alleging financial improprieties and ethical violations. The allegations were false, cobbled together from misunderstood documents and deliberate misrepresentation, but the damage was immediate and severe. Shareholders panicked. The stock price plummeted. Clients started pulling contracts. In 48 hours, Ethan watched years of careful reputation building crumble like sand castles at high tide. His legal team worked around the clock, but the problem wasn't just legal, it was systemic. The leak had exposed vulnerabilities in their data management system, and now they needed to prove to clients and shareholders that they'd addressed those vulnerabilities. They needed a comprehensive audit, a new security protocol, and someone who understood the company's systems intimately enough to redesign them from the ground up. They needed Lena Brooks. "Absolutely not," Ethan said when his COO suggested it. "I won't put her in that position." "Ethan, she's the only one who knows our systems well enough to do this in the time frame we need," David argued. Everyone else would need weeks just to get up to speed. We don't have weeks. She'll refuse anyway. Maybe. But shouldn't that be her choice? Ethan closed his eyes, weighing pride against pragmatism, personal feelings against the welfare of the 3,000 people who depended on coal industries for their livelihoods. Finally, he nodded. I'll call her myself. She answered on the third ring. Lena Brooks Consulting. It's Ethan. Silence stretched between them, and he rushed to fill it. I need your help. Coal Industries is in trouble, and you're the only person I trust to fix it. Before you find out what happens next, hit that like button if you're invested in this story. It really helps us out. Trust. Her laugh was bitter. That's rich coming from you. I know I don't deserve your help. I know I destroyed any right I had to ask you for anything. But this isn't about me. It's about 3,000 employees who will lose their jobs if this company goes under. More silence. Then, cautiously, what kind of trouble? He explained the situation, holding nothing back. The leaked documents, the panic, the need for a complete security overhaul. As he talked, he could almost hear her mind working through the problem, that analytical brilliance that had made her invaluable now focused on his crisis. Send me the details, she finally said. I'll review them and let you know if I can help. Lena, that's all I'm promising, Ethan. But I'm not making any commitments beyond that. She hung up before he could thank her. 24 hours later, she walked into Coal Industries for the first time in 4 months. Ethan stood when she entered his office, drinking in the sight of her. She wore a navy suit that was new, more expensive than what she used to wear. Her hair was styled differently, pulled back in a way that emphasized the sharp lines of her face. She looked professional, successful, and utterly untouchable. Thank you for coming, he said. I reviewed your files. She set her laptop on his desk, all business. Your problems are worse than you described. The leak exposed systemic weaknesses in your data architecture that go back years. Fixing this isn't a matter of patching holes. You need a complete rebuild. How long will that take? 6 weeks, if I work around the clock and bring in additional consultants. It'll be expensive. Money isn't the issue. No, she agreed, meeting his eyes for the first time. It never is with you. The jab landed as she'd intended it to. Ethan absorbed it without flinching. What do you need from me? Full access to all systems. Complete cooperation from your IT department. And I work independently. No oversight, no interference, no second-guessing my decisions. Either you trust me to do this, or you don't. There's no middle ground. You have it. All of it. She nodded crisply. I'll need an office. Not my old one, she added quickly. Somewhere else. You can have the corner office on 42. That's David's office. He'll move. Lena, he stopped, uncertain how to voice what he needed to say. I'm sorry. For everything. For not trusting you, for firing you without cause, for not fighting harder to make things right. You deserved better than what I gave you. Something flickered across her face, too quick to identify. Save the apologies, Ethan. I'm here to do a job, that's all. What happened between us is in the past. She left before he could respond, and Ethan stood alone in his office, wondering if some mistakes were too big to ever truly fix. The next 6 weeks were a study in controlled torture. Lena worked from dawn until well past midnight, rebuilding systems with the precision of a surgeon and the vision of an architect. Ethan tried to give her space, but the building wasn't big enough to avoid her completely. He'd see her in the halls, arguing with IT staff or explaining protocols to nervous executives. She was brilliant, commanding, utterly in her element. And she wouldn't look at him unless absolutely necessary. They spoke only when work demanded it. She'd send crisp emails outlining progress and requesting resources. He'd approve everything immediately, grateful just to see her name in his inbox. Once, passing in the hallway, he'd held the elevator for her. She'd taken the stairs instead. You're pathetic, David told him one evening, finding Ethan staring at security footage that happened to show Lena's office. Just go talk to her. And say what? Sorry I broke your trust and humiliated you publicly? Sorry I was too proud to admit I was wrong? Sorry I fell in love with you and couldn't handle it like an adult. David's eyebrows shot up. Well, that last one might be worth mentioning. She hates me, David. No, Hiseo said thoughtfully. She doesn't. If she hated you, she wouldn't be here killing herself to save your company. She'd have let us burn and enjoyed the view. The fact that she came back means something. It means she has a conscience. It means she still cares, you idiot. The question is, what are you going to do about it? 3 weeks into the rebuild, Lena discovered something that changed everything. Hidden in the old code, buried under layers of routine operations, was evidence of systematic embezzlement. Someone had been siphoning funds from coal industries for years, small amounts that added up to millions. And the trail led straight to Marcus, Ethan's current assistant. The same Marcus who had accused Lena of losing that file. She stared at her screen, watching the numbers tell their damning story. Marcus had framed her. He'd deliberately sabotaged her to eliminate the one person likely to discover his theft. And Ethan had believed him without question. The smart thing would be to report this to Ethan and walk away. Let him deal with the betrayal, the investigation, the fallout. But something made her dig deeper, tracking the money through offshore accounts and shell corporations. The amounts were staggering. If this became public, especially now with the company already under scrutiny, it could be the final blow that destroyed coal industries. Lena worked through the night, building an airtight case while simultaneously designing a recovery plan. By dawn, she had everything she needed. Evidence, recommendations, a strategy for dealing with the press if the story leaked. She'd even identified a way to recover most of the stolen funds. She hadn't done it for Ethan. She'd done it for the employees who didn't deserve to suffer for their boss's poor judgment in trusting the wrong person. At least, that's what she told herself as she finally headed home for a shower and a change of clothes. When she returned to Coal Industries that afternoon, she found Ethan in a meeting with the board. She waited outside, her evidence burning a hole in her laptop bag. When he finally emerged, he looked exhausted, defeated in a way she'd never seen him. Lena? I thought you'd left for the day. We need to talk. Privately. His office was exactly as she remembered, down to the city view he never seemed to appreciate. She opened her laptop and turned it toward him. I found something during the security audit. You're going to want to sit down. Ethan remained standing as she walked him through her discovery. She watched his expression shift from confusion to shock to white-hot fury as the truth revealed itself. Marcus, his trusted assistant, had been stealing from him for 3 years. The same Marcus who had accused Lena, who had stood beside Ethan as he fired her, who had smiled sympathetically while pushing her toward the door. He framed you, Ethan said finally, his voice hollow. He framed you and he couldn't finish the sentence. I've documented everything. The evidence is solid enough for criminal prosecution. I've also outlined a recovery strategy and a communication plan if this becomes public. With the right approach, you can turn this into a positive story about rooting out corruption and strengthening oversight. Ethan looked at her, really looked at her, and she saw something raw and broken in his eyes. Why? Why what? Why are you helping me? After everything I did to you, why are you still protecting this company? Because 3,000 people work here, Ethan. Because they have families and mortgages and dreams that have nothing to do with your mistakes or Marcus's crimes. Because someone has to give a damn about them, and apparently, that someone is me. It's not just that. He moved closer, and she fought the urge to step back. You could have reported this and walked away. You could have let the scandal break and destroyed me in the process. But you didn't. You built a solution. You protected everyone, including me. Why, Lena? Because I still care about you, you impossible, infuriating man. Because I see the person you are beneath all the ice and pride, the one who works himself to exhaustion and lies awake worrying about people he pretends not to care about. Because I fell in love with you somewhere between late-night strategy sessions and early morning coffee, and I'm furious at myself for not being able to stop. She didn't say any of that. Instead, she closed her laptop and stood. I'll need full cooperation from your legal team to coordinate Marcus's termination and the criminal complaint. HR should be involved too. This needs to be handled carefully. Lena. He caught her hand as she moved past him, and the contact sent electricity racing up her arm. Please. Just talk to me. Not about work, not about Marcus or the company. Talk to me about us. There is no us, Ethan. There's an employer who made a mistake and an employee who got hurt. That's all. That's not all, and you know it. His grip tightened, not painful but insistent. I fired you because I was scared. Because you made me feel things I'd spent years avoiding. Because every time you looked at me, I saw everything I'd been trying not to want. A real connection. Trust. Someone who saw past the money and the power to the person underneath. And that terrified you so much you destroyed it? Her voice cracked despite her best efforts. You humiliated me in front of the entire board, Ethan. You threw away 3 years of loyalty over an accusation you didn't even bother to verify. And now you want me to what? Forget it happened? Pretend everything's fine. No. I want you to let me make it right. Not by throwing money at the problem or offering you your job back, but by being honest for the first time in my life. He released her hand but didn't move away. I'm in love with you. I think I have been for months, maybe longer. And I'm terrified of that, of needing someone, of being vulnerable. But I'm more terrified of never getting the chance to tell you. The words hung in the air between them, dangerous and beautiful. Lena felt tears threatening and blinked them back furiously. You can't just say that and expect everything to be fixed. I know. I know I broke your trust and I might never get it back. But I'm asking for the chance to try. Not as your boss, not as someone who has power over you. As equals. As partners. If you'll have me. Ethan, I've been helping you, he said quickly, before she could finish refusing. These past months, behind the scenes. When anyone tried to sabotage you or undervalue your work, I shut it down. I know you didn't need my help, I know you're brilliant and capable and would have succeeded without me. But I needed to do something, needed to prove to myself that I could put you first even when you'd never know. Lena stared at him, pieces clicking into place. The client who had suddenly doubled her fee. The competitor whose smear campaign had died overnight. The doors that had opened just a little too easily. You interfered with my business? I protected you. There's a difference. No, there isn't. I needed to do this on my own, to prove I could succeed without Coal Industries, without you. And you took that away from me. She walked to the door, anger and hurt and love warring inside her chest. With her hand on the handle, she turned back. You want to make things right? Stop protecting me. Stop making decisions for me. Stop assuming you know what I need better than I do. And maybe, I'll consider forgiving you. The door closed behind her with a soft click, leaving Ethan alone with his confession and his regrets. The Marcus situation exploded across the next week. Criminal charges were filed. The press had a field day. But Lena's careful preparation paid off. Ethan faced the cameras and took full responsibility, not just for Marcus's crimes but for the systemic failures that had allowed them to happen. He announced sweeping reforms, new oversight procedures, and an independent audit of all financial operations. Throughout it all, Lena worked tirelessly, implementing the new security protocols and managing the crisis from behind the scenes. She avoided Ethan when possible, communicated through intermediaries when necessary, and tried desperately to ignore the way her heart raced every time she glimpsed him in the building. The final day of the rebuild arrived. Lena completed the last system check, reviewed the documentation one final time, and compiled her final report. It was over. Coal Industries was secure, stronger than it had been before the crisis. Her work was done. She was packing up her temporary office when Ethan appeared in the doorway. He looked like he hadn't slept in days, but there was a determination in his eyes she recognized. I need 10 minutes, he said. Ethan, please. After this, if you want me to leave you alone, I will. But give me 10 minutes. She nodded, too tired to argue. He stepped inside and closed the door. I called an emergency board meeting this morning. He began. I told them everything. About firing you unjustly, about Marcus, about how my pride and fear nearly destroyed this company. And then I told them about you. About your brilliance, your integrity, your unwavering commitment to doing what's right even when it hurts. I recommended they offer you a seat on the board. Lena's mouth fell open. You did what? They voted unanimously to extend the invitation. Full board position, competitive compensation, complete independence. You'd have real power to shape this company's future, to implement the reforms you've been recommending for years, to be an equal voice in every major decision. Why would you do that? Because you deserve it. Because this company needs someone like you in leadership. And because I'm done making decisions for you. He pulled an envelope from his pocket. This is my formal apology, witnessed by the full board. An acknowledgement that I fired you without cause, that you were innocent of all accusations, and that your contributions to coal industries were invaluable. It'll go in your permanent file, with copies distributed to anyone who might question your departure. She took the envelope with shaking hands. Ethan, I'm not done. He took a breath. I've also instructed my attorneys to set up a trust fund for your mother's medical care. Ongoing treatments, experimental options, whatever she needs. You can't refuse it because it's not yours to refuse. It's hers, and it's the least I can do after failing you so completely. Tears were streaming down her face now, and she didn't bother to hide them. You can't just buy your way back into my life. I'm not trying to. I'm trying to be the man you deserve, the one you saw in me even when I couldn't see it myself. Everything I'm offering comes with no strings attached. You can take the board position and never speak to me again. You can refuse everything and walk away. Whatever you choose, I'll respect it. And what do you want? I want you. The words came out raw, honest, stripped of all pretense. I want coffee with you in the morning and arguments about strategy in the afternoon. I want to hear you laugh at my terrible jokes and tell me when I'm being an ass. I want to build something real with you, something that isn't based on power dynamics or professional obligations. But only if that's what you want too. Lena set the envelope aside and stepped closer, her heart pounding so hard she was sure he could hear it. You hurt me. I know. You broke my trust and my heart. I know. And you're going to spend a very long time making up for that. His eyes widened. Does that mean, it means I'm willing to try? Not as your employee, not as someone you saved or protected. As equals. As partners who challenge each other and support each other and aren't afraid to call each other out when necessary. Equals, he repeated, like the word was a prayer. Partners. And if you ever fire me again, I'll deserve whatever vengeance you devise. A smile broke across his face, transforming him from the cold toe into someone warm and human and beautiful. Does this mean I can kiss you, or is that still off limits? In answer, she closed the distance between them and kissed him first. It was tentative at first, testing, but then his arms came around her and she melted into him, pouring 4 months of anger and longing and stubborn love into that kiss. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, she rested her forehead against his. We're going to have so many rules, she murmured. I'm looking forward to negotiating every one of them. And therapy. We're both going to therapy. Already found us a couples counselor. Her name's Dr. Martinez. She specializes in trust rebuilding, and she has an opening next Tuesday. Lena pulled back to look at him. You found us a therapist? I've been preparing for this conversation for weeks. I wasn't going to screw it up by being unprepared. He cupped her face gently. I love you, Lena Brooks. And I'm going to spend the rest of my life proving I'm worthy of you. You're worthy of me right now, she said softly. Flawed and imperfect and trying. That's all I ever wanted from you. Just the truth. They stood there in the fading afternoon light, two broken people choosing to rebuild together, choosing vulnerability over protection, choosing love over fear. If you made it to the end of this story, thank you for being here. Please subscribe to our channel, hit that notification bell, and leave a comment letting us know what you thought. Your support helps us create more stories like this one. 6 months later, Lena Brooks sat in her first official board meeting as a full member, presenting her proposal for employee wellness initiatives. Ethan watched from across the table, pride radiating from him like heat. When she finished, the board erupted in approval, and he caught her eye with a subtle wink that made her fight a smile. After the meeting, they walked out together. Not boss and employee, not even CEO and board member, but partners in every sense of the word. Her consultancy had grown into one of the most respected firms in the city. His company had rebounded stronger than ever, its reputation enhanced by the transparency and accountability they'd built together. Dinner tonight? Ethan asked as they waited for the elevator. Can't. I have a meeting with a potential client. Tomorrow? Mom's chemotherapy appointment. I told you I'd be with her all day. Sorry. He smiled ruefully. I'm still learning to check the calendar you share with me. You're getting better. Last month you forgot 3 times. Progress, he agreed. The elevator arrived, and they stepped inside. As the doors closed, shutting out the world, Ethan pulled her close and kissed her temple. I'm proud of you. Everything you've built.